Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review, where we're just a bunch of blind men trying to figure out that elephant. I'm your host, Lou Rosenfeld, and my guest today is Alana Washington. Hi, Alana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you on the show. Alana is the interim head of design at Uber Freight. She was originally hired to lead the DesignOps operation there, and she's also a new curator as part of the curation team for the DesignOps Summit, which is happening number 4 already. I can't really believe that. The 4th one is a virtual edition, not surprisingly. That's going to happen in late October. And good Lord, we just got over 100 submissions. We just closed the call for proposals today. So you got your work cut out ahead of you, Alana.
I am so excited. I am so excited to dig in and see what themes are popping up and what trends are emerging and what people are really thinking about. I think we have our preconceived notions about what's top of mind for folks as they've helped transition their teams into this kind of virtual, dispersed environment. But yeah, I'm prepared to be surprised too.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, if anything, the role of design ops is maybe even more important, both for like the, oh my God, how are we going to manage a distributed, fully remote organization? What kind of infrastructure do designers need to be successful? But also, because you folks are probably more than in the past put in a position to take care of people on your design ops colleagues, your broader design organization, maybe even in some sense for your full organization writ large. Is that something you're feeling right now?
I think so. I also think there's an added component where, for those of us who've been studying best practices about how to stay centered and stay calm, we also realize that we have to lead by example. So I think that there are probably also stories where, like, to create the culture where people feel like they can take vacation, I have to prove that you can take vacation during a global pandemic and that you will feel like you can still come back to a job on Monday. And like all of those things are important. And so, yeah, I think that we have had to, prove that we not only can kind of help identify best practices and processes, but like how to be humans, and that it's okay to be human, and it's okay to have children wandering through Zoom calls and take time off. And basically, I think more than anything, this pandemic has forced who we are outside of work to come rapidly colliding with who we are inside of work. And in talking to the design ops community at large, I feel as though I've just watched people with great grace demonstrate that that's okay, that we are who we are inside and outside of work simultaneously.
Are you finding any really good practices that help successfully draw that boundary between home and work? Because that is just unbelievably difficult right now. I'm in the studio that we rent to do podcasts right now, and it's like the only time I go out for work these days is just to run a podcast. And it's like such this beautiful luxury to have a work-related moment where I'm away from home and away from the family. And this is the rarity. I mean, are you finding that there's any kind of really tried and true approaches that help anyone get away from work or separate work and home?
Yeah, first of all, at the minute that all of this started, I disconnected my work email from my phone, and I logged out of everything that, gave me remote access on my phone, so that I would have to return to like my physical laptop to dig into anything that was work related, which meant that at the end of the day, once I shut that and kind of put it away, it was off for the night. But a practice that's really important to me and my family is about 9 months ago, we started observing a like full Shabbat, but specifically like really doing a tech Shabbat. And on Friday evenings, all the way through Saturday evenings, just removing ourselves from screens, leaning into our record player and going as analog as possible. I mean, just even the beauty of holding a physical book has been really restorative and helpful.
That's really great, says the
Yeah, like
publisher.
yeah, I mean it's awesome. Like yeah, I've like definitely increased the amount of like physical books that I've one ordered and two actually gotten through over the past, few months. And it was lucky we started that practice preceding the pandemic, but it's been one that's been so sustaining that like we get to the end of Friday and whatever we didn't succeed at, like we let it go. And I think that creating those little moments for ourselves, those kind of new rituals, are really helpful at creating space between work and real life or kind of home life, if you will.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, that sounds great, but if you can figure out how to make that work when your kids are teenagers,
The
I
wonderful
have
fall.
a lot of money sitting in a bank account precisely for this because I need a consultant. I need, well, all right, anyway, that's another conversation to have.
I will say though, there's one book, Tiffany Shalane, who is the founder of the Webbies, wrote this really good book called 24/6. And at the very end, she has a series of pages around kind of depending on which age, how you can observe a tech Shabbat and make it interesting. And I love the way that she describes it with her kids, which is you save for that time of the week the thing that you've been wishing you had more time to do. And so if it's painting, if it's creative writing, if it's kind of just also just capturing the attention of your two parents or your parent or your whoever it is for 24 hours, like you've got that bundled up. And so there are ways of repackaging or rebranding screenless days for
I'm
teenagers.
really happy to hear that because I was really a little concerned that her advice was going to involve chloroform. But let's go back to design operations for a moment. So everyone right now is sort of dealing with a reset
Mm.
moment. Like our worlds that have already been sort of teetering on foundations, held together by chewing gum and tape and whatnot, have to some degree crashed and crashed quickly. And so many of us are thinking about what we've been doing and what we should be doing.
Mm.
And as a design operations person, I assume your goals are typically to ultimately make sure that you've got the infrastructure in place for your designers and your researchers to be successful and content and really amplifying their efforts, helping them work on problems that are fulfilling and not tedious. And that's great. But is that enough? And are you finding in your own work that you're at that point of reboot? And what is sort of the next step in that progression? And is it even design ops?
Yeah. Um, I'll share with you on a series of unfinished thoughts because they're kind of in development, and I've been noodling on what comes next because I had the great joy of joining this team in December. And I'm really impressed and excited and energized at seeing how far they've come and have managed really to bond together as a team through just one of the most difficult years. And we just finished H2 planning. And so seeing all that they're going off to work on in the next half, I'm just really stoked to see all of that come to fruition for them. But certainly as a design operations person, kind of once you get a team up and running and you kind of create those conditions for a high performing team, then of course your brain gets, running and thinking about what comes next and how do I grow in this moment. And I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is, the pandemic is setting the stage for trauma and mourning and grief and transitions for pretty much every person in every walk of life. And so I'm considering right now how my design operations background, I have my master's in industrial organizational psychology. So thinking about how people and organizations kind of live and work together, kind of fit together, I'm thinking about what comes next. Like, I know that there will be a higher order need for my skill sets,
Hmm.
and I'm not quite sure what's next. I've gotten this team into a place where it feels like it's going towards high performing, and so kind of um, I'm really enjoying the luxury of this moment, thinking through how to grow. Um, yeah, but I don't know what's next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly finding, and I know a lot of people are, that in all the stress and sadness, there are some silver linings. We're being forced to innovate. Like in our business, as you know, we're doing a lot with coming up with some, compelling ideas around holding virtual conferences, and that really kind of helps me get through times like this. I'm wondering if you're seeing any sort of next steps for how design ops leaders can, I don't know if it's maintain, sustain, take care of is really, I guess, one direction, or maybe it is innovate and do things very differently and sort of expand the scope of what design ops could be on the other hand.
Yeah.
And not just your own experience, but other people in the field that you're talking to. Are you seeing any kind of move in one of those two directions, or something altogether different?
I'd say it's two pronged. I would say that for those who stay within design operations, we are 5 miles into an ultra marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an indeterminate end. And so I feel as though those who really dig in right now will be helping kind of keep their teams even and keep their teams at stasis through the bobs and weaves that we can't even begin to preempt in 2020. And I think that there's this other calling, and one that I might be following, which is to think through how we've managed to make design operations work, but extract that a level above, or even a couple of levels above, and think across holistically across either tech orgs or entire orgs. And this might be where I come full circle to my industrial organizational roots, because I think now more than ever, maybe even taking a step back from that, I fundamentally believe that the way that products and services get made um, actually then, ultimately reflects and is mirrored in the products and services that live in the world. And so how it's made is as important as what is made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, as design operations folks, because we've always kind of kept like humans at the center because we're tied to design teams, I think that whole organizations now need to really live that ethos. And so I'm kind of noodling on like, how do we bring that design operations kind of purview and kind of what is just core to who we are as practitioners up a level or up a few levels within organizations.
I've been sort of waiting to see that happen, and maybe this is the moment where things like that happen, where the design ops organization can kind of take its experience and its wisdom and apply it more broadly around an organization's operations outside design. It sounds like that's maybe what you're starting to see happen, and with your grounding in industrial organizational psychology, that seems to make a lot of sense, right? It's almost like design ops becomes the Trojan horse for improving how organizations operate with their people broadly.
And from like I mean, just from a deeply human perspective, I feel like, um, you know, it's great to fly so close to design and learn that there are so many tricks that we have, and whether it be like remote facilitation tricks all the way through, just knowing whether it be a blueprint solution or a journey map solution, et cetera, like also having a set of artifacts that we can use to kind of bring people together and rally them. I think that just design operations almost added that component that I felt like I was always missing in the IO psychology background, that kind of really softened it and made it tangible for humans. And so I'm really excited about, seeing how design operations, to your point, as a Trojan horse, can kind of help full businesses across the spectrum enact more human based processes.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want more, not only do we have a whole bunch of podcasts in our archive, but we have something that's very current, very alive, and very engaging for groups, and that is our communities. Rosenfeld Media runs a variety of communities that meet on a monthly basis for video conferences on a variety of topics near and dear to UX people, ranging from enterprise experience to advancing research to design and research operations. I want to encourage you to join one of our communities. Again, it is free by going to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. Not only will you get a monthly video conference that you can listen in on and participate in, ask questions and so forth, we'll give you access to the recordings. And for some of those communities, we're talking about dozens of recordings with really interesting presenters and facilitators. You'll also get a newsletter. You'll get access to an advice columnist. Yes, we actually are providing advice columnists for each community. And finally, if you're interested in our conferences, our communities correspond to our conferences. So you will be the first to know when programs go live, when tickets go on sale, and by the way, most of our conferences sell out, and other good things about our conferences, such as when the scholarship applications open up. So go to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. You're going to find something that's free, something that's interesting, and it's a great opportunity to find your tribe as well. We'll see you there. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that comes together at a place like, let's say, Uber, which is a fairly recent new organization, regardless of its heft. It's not been around very long, and design was baked into the DNA from the very get-go, versus at a company that's been around a long time, like Caterpillar, let's say, which is, probably has very substantial ways of going about doing operations that have been established long before design was even a twinkle in the eyes there. I remember doing consulting for them years ago, and Six Sigma was, the way to go, and that was really kind of pervading not only their operations but how they went about design. And so there's like these interesting contrasts of how we both do operations and design better or differently based on the baked in culture and in many cases age of an organization. Do you see that also being true of the field you've come from, industrial organizational psychology? Like it's also got these baked in sort of worldviews that are ripe for change?
I think that what is magical about whether you talk to an organizational psychologist that's working in a consulting firm, or you even, talk to a design ops person, probably a more senior design ops person, the nascence of those people in organizations is the same. They drop in and they do a bit of an analysis and they think through, okay, they look through their toolkit of whether it be change management techniques or artifacts or what have you. And then they, within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then concurrently, or not concurrently, but like well into the future, will just constantly refresh, like, here is the diagnosis I've taken of this situation. And to embetter this team or realign this team or sustain this team, here are the interventions I'd recommend. And I think that that's what's pretty magical is like, you may have, one theory that has fit in another organization and it might be completely obsolete and unhelpful in another. And I think that what is exciting is that there's been enough case studies over the past few years of letting design operations or org psychologists kind of have that moment to diagnose and based on experience come up with what works, that people are kind of given the ability to do that skill. And that's why I really do describe like senior design operations folks as unicorns, because they come in with that ability to diagnose and then suggest. And I think that just now, because of the amount of case studies and successes that we've had in this field, that the path is clear for that to continue to happen.
So, I'm kind of curious. anytime an established field like organizational psychology is intersecting with our world, um, I'm interested to know where the iconoclastic young Turks are hanging out. So I imagine in org psych, there's a bunch of people who are saying, the way we've been thinking and talking about organizational psychology for the last 30 years is stale or no longer current, it's not right, whatever. And they go off and they split off and they create something new. And there's all this intersectional stuff happening. Like and we see this in a lot of fields. In industrial design, we saw like the whole Core 77 community kind of split off because they got sick of the IDSA and how it looked at things. Or I'm seeing this now in market research. We've seen it with HCI, where the UPA, now the UXPA, split off from SIG Chi, the ACM chapter or special interest group. And now there's people splitting off from UXPA and on and on. So I'm just wondering, like, are you seeing that? And maybe more importantly or more usefully, where do you look to learn about your own field, but, the people who are really kind of pushing the boundaries and saying, the conventional way of doing things is not enough. We need to look to other fields. Are there magazines, people, anything that you feel is like the place to kind of get the most up-to-date, useful perspective on organizational psychology, besides the DesignOps Summit?
I was going to say, I think that most of what you're describing are those of us who've left traditional org psych and are kind of creating interesting trouble in our new fields, which I kind of got into because part of organizational psychology is kind of foundational curriculum is statistics and research methods. And so data visualization was kind of my entree to design. But there's a great conference every year that happens called the SIOP conference, which is the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychologists. And I usually pretty much every year, even though I haven't gone in, probably about 7 to 10 years, I'll go and I'll look through who's presenting, and I'll kind of circle where there's kind of an interesting clash or intersection of design and IO psych, or if there's, and there's something there for everybody, whether it be like research methods, survey design, and these psychologists are at a scale that is just wild, whether or not be like personnel selection for Home Depot or other large brands like that. There's so much there. And so I usually look there for inspiration and to kind of keep to what's up to date in the IO psych realm. But I really find that it's like those of us who kind of detracted from that foundation and ended up in other areas and other kind of industries and are doing a little bit of influencing from the side. I also think that just makes us better practitioners because we're closer to the business. I think that one of the things I felt when I first left, and I was lucky enough to get a job like working in organizational effectiveness at HBO. And I just felt like I was to some degree an imposter because I was teaching best practices, but I hadn't earned the stripes to teach them. And so now, years later, coming back, I'm like, okay, well, I've actually been through a multitude of scenarios where I can connect a best practice to an actual case study or thing I've lived, and I can, better espouse that best practice, if you will.
Well, I love what you just said. There's a lot to it, but the word that really stood out for me is trouble. That you're making good trouble.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to thank you for one other thing. You recently gave a talk at the San Francisco Design Week virtual conference that I found really useful. I encourage people to watch it. It's on Vimeo. It's called 6 Tips for Surviving a Racism Pandemic. When I first read the title, I was like, I read it as racism and a pandemic, and I'm like, wow, if you can cover both of those in one talk, that'd be great. But really, I mean, there's just so much to unpack there, and it's very practical, and it's only about 20 minutes long. So if you're listening, my gift to you is a recommendation to go Google for 6 tips for surviving a racism pandemic by our guest, Alana Washington. And before we wrap up, Alana, what about you? Is there anything you've been reading or anyone who's been really inspiring for you that you want to spread the good word about?
Yep. Anybody who's heard me speak before or kind of read anything I've written, articles or whatnot, knows that I always come back to Adrienne Murray Brown, who wrote a book called Emergent Strategy. And I think it's phenomenal. Besides her being a doula, a healer, a community organizer, a strategist, she is just an amazing human. And I think that what is so brilliant about the writing is it centers Black women, non-binary, and just really also praises natural systems that have managed to be resilient. Everything from mushrooms and starlings as they fly in those giant patterns called murmurations, and really just reminds us that we are all fractal. And so when we're thinking about getting through change, if we remember that if we are good custodians of ourselves and the energy with which we kind of walk through the world, we're able to impact the whole. And so for anybody looking for resilience, looking for joy, I highly recommend Adrienne Murray Brown's Emergent Strategy.
Well, thanks for that. Fantastic. And it was great having you join us today. Alana Washington, interim head of design at Uber Freight, one of our curators at the DesignOps Summit, which is taking place virtually this October. I hope we'll see you there. And if you want to follow Alana on Twitter, real simple, Alana Washington. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks for listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen, and check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.